They say some family secrets are better left buried, that there are things about your bloodline you're better off not knowing, that ignorance is bliss. But what happens when that secret that dark, dangerous, powerful secret becomes the only thing standing between you and complete destruction? My name is Marcus, and for 28 years, I thought I knew exactly who I was. A regular guy. Middle-class upbringing. Normal family. I worked as an accountant. Lived in a modest apartment. Married my college sweetheart, Sophia. We had a simple life. A good life. Or so I thought. Because everything I believed about myself, about my family, about my past, it was all a lie. A carefully constructed illusion that shattered the day. A stranger in a black suit knocked on my door and said 6 words that changed everything. Your grandfather was Dominic Salvatore. I laughed. I actually laughed in his face. Because Dominic Salvatore was a legend. A ghost story. The name whispered in dark corners about a man who controlled an entire city decades ago. A crime lord. A king of the underground. A man so powerful that even mentioning his name could get you hurt. There was no way that man was my grandfather. No way that blood ran through my veins, but the stranger had. Proof, documents, photos, records that couldn't be faked. And once I learned the truth, once I understood what legacy I'd been hiding from my entire life, everything made sense. The betrayal. The lies. The people who thought they could destroy me because I was weak. Because I was nobody, they were wrong. So very, very wrong. This is the story of how I discovered my true identity. How my perfect wife turned out to be a snake. How the people I trusted most tried to take everything from me. And how I used the very legacy I'd been running from too. Become someone they would never forget. Because when you come from power, even if you don't know it, that power is always waiting. Always watching. Always ready to remind the world exactly who you are. Let me take you back 6 months. Back to when I thought I had it all figured out. I was Marcus Chen. 28 years old, senior accountant at Henderson & Associates, a mid-sized firm downtown. I made decent money. Not rich, but comfortable. Enough to pay the bills, save a little. Take Sophia out to nice restaurants once a month. Sophia, God, even saying her name now makes me feel sick. But back then, she was everything to me. We met in college. She was studying marketing. I was in business. She had this laugh that could light up a room. These eyes that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. We started dating junior year, got engaged right after graduation, married at 24, 4 years of marriage. For years where I thought we were building something real, something lasting. She worked at a boutique marketing agency called Prestige Creative. Did well for herself. Made good money? We were that couple, you know? The one that people looked at and said, they've got it figured out. My life was routine, predictable. I'd wake up, go to work, come home, have dinner with Sophia, watch some TV, go to bed. Weekends, we'd see friends, visit her parents, live our comfortable little existence. I never questioned it, never looked deeper, because why would I? I trusted her completely. She was my wife, my partner, the person who promised to stand by me forever. My family history was uncomplicated, or so I thought. My parents died in a car accident when I was 5. I barely remembered them. I was raised by my Aunt Margaret, my mother's sister. She never talked much about my father's side of the family, said they were complicated and better left in the past. I never pushed, never asked questions. Aunt Margaret gave me a good life, sent me to decent schools, supported me through college. She died 2 years ago from cancer, and after her funeral, I just assumed I was alone in the world except for Sophia. I had no idea there was an entire history I'd been protected from. No idea that my last name Chun wasn't even my real family name. That it had been changed, hidden, buried to keep me safe from a world I didn't know existed. Everything changed on a Tuesday. A completely ordinary Tuesday. I came home from work around 6:30 like always. I had my briefcase, my tie loosened, ready to relax. I called out for Sophia as I walked in. Babe, I'm home. Silence. That was strange. Her car was in the driveway. She should have been home. I walked through the living room, heading toward the kitchen when I heard it. A sound from upstairs. A voice. No two voices, my heart started pounding. I stood at the bottom of the stairs listening, and then I heard Sophia laugh. That same laugh I'd fallen in love with, but it was different now, intimate, playful. And then I heard a man's voice, deep, familiar. He'll be home soon. You need to go. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, like all the air had been sucked out of the room, because I knew that voice. I knew exactly who was upstairs with my wife. Derek fucking Morrison. My so-called best friend since college, my groomsman at my wedding. The guy I trusted with everything. I could have stormed upstairs, could have kicked down the bedroom door and confronted them right there. But something stopped me. Some instinct I didn't know I had told me to wait, to be smart, to gather information before making a move. So I quietly walked back to the front door, opened it, and slammed it shut loudly. I'm home. I called out again, louder this time. I heard scrambling upstairs. Footsteps whispered panic. And then, about 2 minutes later, Sophia came down the stairs. Her hair was slightly messed up. Her shirt wasn't tucked in right, but she was smiling. Acting normal. Hey, honey. How was work? She kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. Fine, I said, watching her carefully. You okay? You look flushed. I was just doing some yoga upstairs. You know, trying to stay in shape, she laughed, touching my arm. I was thinking we could order Thai food tonight. I nodded, playing along. Sure. Sounds good? About 10 minutes later, I heard the back door close quietly. Derek sneaking out. My best friend, slipping away after sleeping with my wife in our bed. I didn't say anything. Didn't let on that I knew. Because a plan was already forming in my mind. A cold, calculated plan that night after Sophia fell asleep. I went through her phone. No invasion of privacy. But my marriage was already over. I needed to know how deep this betrayal went. What I found made me physically ill. Messages between Sophia and Dereko back 8 months. 8 months of lies. Of secret meetings. Some of them lied about me. About how boring I was. How predictable. How easy it was to fool me. But it wasn't just an affair. No, it was so much worse than that. They were planning to take everything from me. Derek worked in finance, and over the past year, he'd been helping me with investments. I'd given him access to some of my accounts, trusted him to help grow my savings. Sophia had encouraged it, said Derek was brilliant with money. Now I understand why. The messages laid it all out. They'd been systematically draining my accounts, moving money into hidden places. They were planning to wait until they'd taken everything. Then Sophia would divorce me, claim I was abusive or unstable, take half of what little I had left, and run off with Derek. They'd been planning this for months. Every smile, every kiss, every I love you from Sophia had been a lie. A performance while she and my best friend stole my life out from under me. I sat there in the dark, staring at my phone, reading message after message, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Not just anger. Not just heartbreak. I felt rage. Pure, cold, calculated rage. They thought I was weak. Thought I was stupid. Thought I was just some boring accountant they could use and discard. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I acted completely normal. Made coffee. Kissed Sophia goodbye. Went to work like nothing had changed. But inside, I was already planning my next move. I couldn't go to the police, not yet. The money Derek had taken was from accounts I'd voluntarily given him access to. Legally, it would be hard to prove theft. And Sophia would just deny everything, say I was making it up. I needed leverage. Real leverage. Something that would destroy them both completely. I was sitting at my desk that afternoon, reviewing financial statements but barely seeing them, when my office phone rang. Marcus Chen. The voice was professional, male, unfamiliar. Yes, this is Marcus, and my name is Vincent Romano. I need to speak with you today. It's about your family. I almost hung up. Sounded like a scam. But something in his tone made me hesitate. Wait, what about my family? Not over the phone. There's a cafe 3 blocks from your office. Mario's. Meet me there at 4 o'clock. Come alone. He hung up before I could respond. I should have ignored it. Should have written it off as some weird prank. But curiosity got the better of me. At 3:50, I left the office and walked to Mario's cafe. The place was quiet. Old-school Italian decor. Smelled like espresso and fresh bread. And sitting in the back corner, in a booth with high backs that provided privacy, was a man in an immaculate black suit. He was probably in his 60s. Silver hair slicked back. Sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. He gestured for me to sit. "Marcus," he said, like we were old friends. "Thank you for coming. Who are you?" I stayed standing, ready to leave. "Please, sit. I promise this will be worth your time." Against my better judgment, I sat down. Vincent slid a manila folder across the table. "Open it." Inside were photos. Old photos. Black and white, mostly. But one in particular caught my eye. A man, probably in his 40s in the photo, standing outside what looked like a restaurant. He was handsome, powerful-looking, commanding, and he looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same jawline, same build. "Who is this?" "That," Vincent said quietly, "is Dominic Salvatore. Your grandfather." I laughed. Actually laughed. Okay, this is insane. Dominic Salvatore is a myth. An urban legend. And even if he wasn't, there's no way your father was Antonio Salvatore, Vincent interrupted. Dominic's only son. When Antonio was 25, he fell in love with a woman named Lin Chen, your mother. Against his father's wishes, he left the family business, changed his name to Chen, and tried to build a normal life. I stared at him. This is crazy. My Aunt Never, your Aunt Margaret, was protecting you. When your parents disbanded, yes, it was an accident, not a hit. Dominic was still alive. He wanted to bring you into the family, train you. But your aunt fought him. She took you and disappeared. Changed cities. Raised you as far from that world as possible. Vincent pulled out more documents. Birth certificates. Marriage records. Photos of my parents I'd never seen before. Dominic died 15 years ago. But before he died, he set up something. A trust, assets, property. All held in your name, waiting until you were old enough, until the time was right. Why are you telling me this now? My head was spinning. This couldn't be real, because there are people who know who you really are. People who've been watching you. And recently, there's been ... activity. Someone's been asking questions about you. Digging into your background. My blood ran cold. Who? We're still finding out. But Marcus, you need to understand something. Whether you like it or not, you are Dominic Salvatore's grandson. That name still carries weight. Still has power. Still has enemies. He slid another paper across the table. A bank statement. I looked at the number at the bottom and nearly fell out of my chair. $20-3 million. This is one of 5 accounts held in your name. There are also properties, businesses, investments. Your grandfather built an empire, and before he died, he made sure that if his bloodline survived, they would be taken care of. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. $23 million? Properties. This was impossible. Why didn't anyone tell me before? Your aunt's dying wish was that you be allowed to live a normal life, so we honored that. We watched from a distance, made sure you were safe, but we never interfered. Until now. Until now. Why now? Vincent's expression darkened. Because someone close to you is betraying you. Someone who knows exactly what they're doing. And if you don't act soon, you're going to lose everything, both the life you built and the inheritance you never knew you had. My mind immediately went to Sophia and Derek, but how would they know about any of this? Who's betraying me? Your wife, Vincent said simply. And your friend Derek Morrison? But there's more. Derek isn't working alone. He's connected to the Castellano family, rivals of your grandfather. They've been waiting decades for a chance to finish what they started. Everything clicked into place. The affair wasn't just about sex or money. It was about destroying the last of the Salvatore bloodline. And what do I do? The question came out as barely a whisper. Vincent smiled, cold, calculating. You stop playing their game, and you start playing yours. You're not just Marcus Chen, accountant. You're Marcus Salvatore, and it's time the world remembered what that name means. I left that cafe in a daze. Everything I thought I knew about myself had been shattered. My entire identity was a lie. I wasn't just some nobody. I was the grandson of one of the most powerful men who ever controlled this city. But more than that, I now understood that Sophia and Derek weren't just cheating on me for personal gain. They were part of something bigger, something dangerous. The Castellanos had been my grandfather's enemies, and now they were using my wife and my best friend to destroy me from the inside. Vincent gave me a card before I left. Just a phone number. No name. When you're ready, he said, call that number. We'll help you reclaim what's yours. But Marcus, once you step into this world, there's no going back. You need to be sure. I went home that night and looked at Sophia differently. She was in the kitchen making dinner, humming to herself, acting like the loving wife. But now I saw her for what she really was. A weapon. A tool being used by people who wanted to erase my family's legacy. How is work, honey? She asked, smiling that fake smile. Fine, I said. Actually, I've been thinking. Derek mentioned some new investment opportunities. Maybe we should have him over this weekend to discuss? Her eyes lit up. Oh, that's a great idea. I'll text him. She was so eager. So confident. They had no idea that I knew everything. No idea that the game had already changed. That night, I called the number Vincent gave me. He answered on the first ring. I was hoping you'd call. I need to know everything. About my grandfather. About the family. About what I'm walking into. Come to this address tomorrow night. 9 p.m. Come alone. The next evening, I told Sophia I had to work late on a big project. She barely looked up from her phone, probably texting Derek and just waved me off. Drove to the address Vincent had given me. It was in the old district, the part of the city where warehouses and forgotten buildings still stood. I almost turned back 3 times. This felt insane, dangerous. But I kept driving. The building looked abandoned from the outside. But when I knocked on the heavy metal door, it opened immediately. A man in a suit, younger than Vincent, but with the same sharp, professional look, gestured for me to follow him. We walked through what looked like an old warehouse, but then he opened another door, and suddenly I was in a completely different world. The room was stunning. Wood-paneled walls, leather furniture, a massive desk, bookshelves filled with leather-bound books. It looked like something out of a movie. Old world class and power. Vincent was there, along with 3 other men. All older. All watching me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Marcus, Vincent said, standing. These are the men who served your grandfather, who've been protecting his interests and yours for the past 15 years, he introduced them. Carlo, who handled the business side. Frank, who managed security. And Giuseppe, who specialized in ... information. Your grandfather, Vincent began, was not just a crime boss. He was a businessman. He understood that real power comes from control. From having your hands in legitimate enterprises while maintaining respect through less. Kant means he walked me through it all. My grandfather had owned restaurants, nightclubs, real estate developments. He'd had connections with unions, politicians, police. He'd been untouchable because he was smart, strategic, never got his hands dirty, never left evidence. When he died, Vincent continued, many of his rivals thought the Salvatore name would die with him. Your father was gone. You were just a child, hidden away. They thought they'd won, Carlo added. Dominic set up a trust, made sure everything would be held, protected, until you came of age, until you were ready, and now. I asked. Now, the Castellanos have realized you exist. They've been watching you. And when Derek Morrison came looking for information about your finances for what he thought was just a scam, steal from a nobody accountant, he accidentally flagged their attention. Giuseppe leaned forward. Derek's cousin works for the Castellanos. Low level, but connected. When Derek started bragging about this big score he was planning, about stealing from some guy named Chen... Someone did their homework. Found out Chen used to be Salvatore. And suddenly, this wasn't just a theft. It was an opportunity. My hands clenched into fists. They're using Sophia and Derek to destroy me. Exactly, Vincent said. If they can bankrupt you, humiliate you, destroy your reputation, the Salvatore name dies quietly. No war, no attention. Just the last descendant broken and forgotten. So what do I do? Vincent smiled. You fight back. But not like Marcus Chen, accountant. Like Marcus Salvatore, heir to an empire. Over the next 3 hours, they laid it all out. Everything I had access to. Every resource, every connection. My grandfather had been brilliant. He'd built networks that still existed, still functioned, still waited for the right person to activate them. We can help you, Vincent said. We can give you the tools, the information, the power. But you have to decide. Do you want justice? Or do you want revenge? I thought about Sophia's lies, about Derek's betrayal, about the Castellanos thinking they could erase my family's legacy. I want both, I said coldly. I want them destroyed completely. I want them to know exactly who they tried to mess with. Vincent's smile widened. Then let's get to work. The first step was information, Giuseppe's specialty. Within 48 hours, I had everything. Every text message between Sophia and Derek, including the deleted ones. Every bank transaction, every secret meeting, every lie. But more than that, I had information on Derek's cousin, Tony Castellano. And through him, I had a direct line to understanding exactly how deep this conspiracy went. Turned out, Castellanos weren't just using Derek to steal my money. They were planning to frame me for money laundering once my accounts were drained. They'd plant evidence, make it look like I'd been running illegal operations, destroy my reputation, maybe even send me to prison. It was elegant, really. Destroy the last Salvatore without firing a single shot. Just legal destruction and public humiliation. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed I was weak, that I would never fight back, that I didn't have the resources or the intelligence to see what was happening. They forgot that. Salvatore blood runs deep. Vincent and his team helped me build a counterplan. It was complex, multi-layered, and absolutely devastating phase. 1. Let them think they're winning. I continued acting normal. Let Derek keep helping with my investments. Let Sophia keep up her charade. I even suggested we take a vacation soon, gave them a timeline, made them confident that their plan was working. Meanwhile, Giuseppe was working magic. He hacked into Derek's accounts and found exactly where my money had been moved. Offshore accounts. Dummy corporations. He mapped it all out, but we didn't move to recover it yet. Because Phase 1 was about gathering evidence so airtight that when we struck, there would be no escape. Phase 2, flip the script. Carlo, who handled the business side, helped me do something brilliant. Using my newfound resources, we bought the marketing agency where Sophia worked. Not in my name, obviously. Through shell corporations and careful maneuvering, within a week, I owned Prestige Creative. Sophia had no idea her boss's boss's boss was now me. We also found out that Derek had been skimming from his own firm. Small amounts, thinking no one would notice. Giuseppe gathered all that evidence to Phase 3, cut off the head. This was the dangerous part. We needed to deal with the Castellanos. Not violently, we weren't starting a war, but we needed to make them understand that I wasn't prey, that the Salvatore name still meant something. Vincent arranged a meeting. Neutral ground. A restaurant in the old district that had been owned by my grandfather. It still existed, still operated, though I'd never known it was part of my inheritance. Frank went with me. Big guy, former military, the kind of person who didn't need to speak to communicate threat. We arrived at 10 p.m. The restaurant was closed to the public. But inside, at a large table in the back, sat 3 men. The Castellano brothers. Marco, the oldest. Vincent, the middle. And Anthony, the youngest and most dangerous. Marco stood when we entered. He was probably in his 70s now. Still sharp. Still powerful, so he said, looking me up and down. Dominic's grandson. I'll be honest, I didn't believe it when they told me. You don't look like much. Funny, I said, my voice steady. I was thinking the same thing about you. His eyes narrowed. But Anthony laughed. He's got balls. I'll give him that. I sat down without being invited. Frank stood behind me, silent and imposing. Here's how this is going to work, I said. Your little plan with Derek Morrison and my wife? It's over. I know everything. I have evidence of everything. And if you don't back off immediately, I'm going to burn your entire operation to the ground. Marco's face turned red. You threatening us, boy? I'm informing you. There's a difference. My grandfather built something that lasted decades after his death. You think you can just erase that? Erase me? You're wrong. I pulled out a folder, thank you. Giuseppe Ann slid it across the table. It's just a sample. Financial records of your operations. Proof of bribes. Of illegal deals. Of connections you definitely don't want exposed. I have more. Much more. And if anything happens to me, if I even sneeze wrong, all of it goes to the FBI, the IRS, and every news outlet in the state.
Ow.
The 3 brothers exchanged looks. They weren't used to being challenged, especially not by someone they'd dismissed as a nobody. You're making a mistake, Anthony said quietly, dangerously. No, you made the mistake. You forgot that Salvatore doesn't mean just one man. It means a legacy, and I'm not going to let you destroy it. I stood up. Derek Morrison is mine. Sophia is mine. They betrayed me, and I'm going to handle them my way. But you're going to disappear from my life completely. And in return, I won't destroy everything you've built. I walked toward the door. Then I stopped and looked back. Oh, and one more thing. This restaurant, it's mine. Has been since my grandfather died. So this meeting, it happened on my territory. Just so we're clear about who has power here. I walked out, my heart hammering, but my face calm. Frank followed as we got in the car. Frank chuckled. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Which one was it? Guess we'll find out. Castellanos backed off. Vincent confirmed it 3 days later. They weren't happy, but they weren't stupid. They knew I had leverage. And more importantly, they knew I wasn't bluffing. Tony Castellano. Derek's cousin was quietly reassigned to a different city, permanently. The message was clear. Stay away from Marcus Salvatore. Now it was time to deal with the real betrayers. Sophia and Derek. I'd let them think they were winning for weeks now. Let them drain my accounts, plan their future, celebrate their clever scheme. Derek had taken about $80,000 total, not life-ruining. But significant, what they didn't know was that Giuseppe had been tracking every single transaction. And Carlo had been quietly moving my real assets, my inheritance. My grandfather's empire into protected accounts they couldn't touch. As far as Sophia and Derek knew, they were stealing everything I had. In reality, they were stealing pennies while I sat on millions. The plan was simple, but devastating. First, use my ownership of Sophia's company to my advantage. I had Giuseppe create a fake investigation into financial irregularities at Prestige Creative. Nothing that would affect Sophia directly, enough to make her nervous. Suddenly, her company was being audited. People were asking questions. She came home stressed, complaining about it. I played the supportive husband perfectly. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, rubbing her shoulders. These things happen. It'll blow over. She had no idea the investigation was designed specifically to trap her. Second, I arranged for Derek's firm to discover his skimming. I didn't have to plant evidence he'd actually been stealing. We just made sure it got noticed. Suddenly, Derek was under investigation at work. Suspended pending review, he called me, panicking. "Marcus, man, I need your help." "They're saying I stole money. That's crazy," I said, putting false concern in my voice. "You'd never do that." "What can I do?" "Can you maybe lend me some money? To hire a lawyer? Just until this blows over." I paused, like I was thinking. "Yeah, of course. How much do you need?" "Maybe 10,000? Consider it done." That's what friends are for. He had no idea I was the reason he needed a lawyer in the first place. Third, and this was the beautiful part I scheduled. A romantic weekend getaway with Sophia. Told her we needed to reconnect, that I'd been distant lately and wanted to make it up to her. She hesitated, probably because it would interfere with her plans with Derek, but she couldn't say no without raising suspicion. I booked a luxury resort 3 hours away, made all the arrangements, made it seem like I was trying to save our marriage. What Sophia didn't know was that while we were gone, Frank and Giuseppe would be at our house, installing cameras, gathering final evidence, and preparing the real trap. The weekend was torture. I had to pretend to be loving, had to touch her, kiss her, act like I didn't know she was planning to destroy me, had to smile while imagining Derek, wondering where she was, what she was doing. But I played my part perfectly. And by the end of the weekend, Sophia actually seemed to relax, seemed to think that maybe I really was just the oblivious, boring husband she could manipulate forever. We came home Sunday evening. Everything looked normal. Sophia went to take a shower, and I went to my office, the small room I used for work-from-home days. There, hidden in my desk drawer where only I would find it, was a USB drive. Giuseppe's work. I plugged it into my laptop. Video files, audio files, documents, everything. Footage of Derek sneaking into my house on the days I was at work. Audio of Sophia on the phone with him, laughing about me planning their future. Screenshots of messages I hadn't seen before, even more damning than what I'd found earlier, and financial records. Clear, undeniable proof that they'd been systematically stealing from me for 8 months. But the most important file was labeled Final Plan. I opened it. It was a recorded phone conversation from just 2 days ago. Derek and Sophia discussing their timeline. "We take the last transfer next week," Derek's voice said. "Then you file for divorce. We stick to the story, you'll say. He's been emotionally abusive, controlling with money. My cousin Tony's lawyer friend will help make sure you get everything in the split, and then..." Sophia's voice, cold. Nothing like the woman I married. "Then we disappear for a while. Let things cool down. Tony says his family will help if Marcus tries to make trouble. But honestly, what's he going to do? He's a nobody. He'll probably just roll over and take it." They both laughed. I sat there listening to my wife and my best friend laugh about destroying me. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction, because they'd just handed me everything I needed. Tomorrow was Monday. The day they planned to take the final transfer. The day they thought they'd won. But tomorrow was also the day their entire world would collapse. Monday morning arrived. Sophia left for work early, probably to coordinate with Derek. I went through my morning routine like normal. Coffee, toast, the news. But today was different. Today was the end. I called Vincent. "It's time." "Everything's ready," he said. "You sure about this?" "Completely." At 9 a.m., Sophia received an email at work. It appeared to be from the company's legal department. There was a mandatory meeting. All senior staff. Immediately, she had no idea that I owned the company, that every person in that building ultimately answered to me. When Sophia walked into the conference room, she found her boss, the HR director, and 2 attorneys waiting. She sat down, confused. "Ms. Chen," one of the attorneys said, "we've completed our investigation into financial irregularities at this company. We've discovered that someone has been using company resources for personal business, specifically using company computers to coordinate fraud and theft. Sophia's face went pale. I don't understand. We have logs of your computer activity. Emails sent from your company account to Derek Morrison discussing the theft of money from your husband's accounts. We have evidence that you used company time and resources to plan and execute this fraud. They slid documents across the table. Sophia's hands shook as she looked at them. Her own words. Her own messages? Undeniable. This is a terminable offense, her boss said quietly. As of this moment, you're fired. Security will escort you out, and will be cooperating fully with law enforcement in their investigation of your actions. Investigation? What investigation? You can't, Mrs. Chen. Your husband filed a police report this morning for fraud, theft, and identity theft. The evidence has been turned over to the district attorney's office. You should probably get a lawyer. I wasn't there to see it, but Frank was watching from outside the building. He called me as Sophia was escorted out by security, crying her career destroyed in minutes. She's devastated, Frank said. Didn't see it coming at all. Good. What about Derek? Check your phone. I looked down. Giuseppe had sent me a video file. I pressed play. It was Derek being escorted out of his office building by police. Arrested at work in front of everyone for embezzlement from his firm and for conspiracy to commit fraud against me. His face was frozen in shock. He'd thought he was untouchable. Thought his connections to the Castellanos would protect him, but those connections were gone. Tony had been sent away, and the Castellano brothers had made it clear Derek was on his own. I sat in my apartment, my real apartment, not the modest place I'd been living in. Vincent had helped me move my actual residence to a luxury building I owned but had never known about. Part of my inheritance? My phone rang. Sophia. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened.
Please.
Please call me back. There's been a horrible mistake. They're saying I did things I didn't do. They're saying you filed charges against me? Why would you do that? I'm your wife. I love you. Please, we can work this out. Just call me back. Delete. Derek called next. Same thing. Pleading. Claiming he was innocent. Claiming he didn't understand what was happening. Delete. They called 17 times that day. I didn't answer once. Instead, I met with my lawyers, real lawyers. The kind that charge $1,000 an hour, and we finalized everything. The divorce papers citing adultery and fraud. The civil lawsuit against both Sophia and Derek for theft and emotional distress. The criminal complaints that were already being prosecuted by the DA. He'll probably try to take a plea deal, my lead attorney said. Especially Derek. He's looking at 5 to 10 years if this goes to trial. No deals, I said firmly. I want them in court. I want everything exposed. Every betrayal. Every stolen dollar. I want it on public record. The attorney nodded. Understood. It'll be expensive and lengthy, but we'll make sure justice is served. Money isn't an issue anymore, I said quietly. And it wasn't. I had access to resources I'd never imagined. My grandfather's empire was now mine to command. The preliminary hearings happened 2 weeks later. I attended both. Sat in the back of the courtroom and watched as Sophia and Derek were arraigned on multiple charges. Sophia looked broken. Her hair wasn't done. She wore a simple dress instead of her usual designer clothes. She kept looking around the courtroom like she was searching for me, for some sign that I would help her. I stayed in the shadows. Let her search. Let her wonder. Derek looked angry, defiant. He kept whispering aggressively to his lawyer, probably trying to claim he was being set up. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records. Video footage. Recorded conversations. There was no defense. When Sophia's eyes finally found me in the back row, I saw her face change. Shock, then recognition. Then something like hope, misguided hope that maybe I was there to support her. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then I stood up and walked out without a word. I didn't need to see the rest. My lawyers would handle it from here. Over the next month, their lives continued to unravel in spectacular fashion. Sophia's parents called me, begging me to drop the charges, saying their daughter made a mistake, that she was sorry that I was ruining her life. She ruined her own life, I told them calmly. She made choices. Now she faces consequences. Derek's family tried a different approach. Threats. His brother called me, said I'd regret this, that I was making powerful enemies. I had Vincent handle that call. After 10 minutes of Vincent explaining exactly who I was and what resources I had access to, Derek's brother never called again. The Castellanos stayed. Silent, smart. They knew this was between me and the people who'd betrayed me. They'd learned their lesson about interfering with a Salvatore. The trial took 3 months to prepare. Both Sophia and Derek tried multiple times to reach plea agreements. The prosecutors kept bringing them to my lawyers, and every time I said no. Let them go to trial, I insisted. Let a jury hear what they did. Let it be public record, my lead attorney warned me. Marcus, trials are unpredictable. There's always a chance there's no chance, I interrupted. We have everything. Every piece of evidence is bulletproof. They will be convicted, and the world will know what they did. And I was right. The trial began on a cold November morning. The courthouse was downtown, one of those old buildings with marble columns and high ceilings that made everything feel important. Historic. I sat behind the prosecution table every single day, front row, where Sophia and Derek could see me, where they would be forced to face what they'd done. The prosecution laid out the case methodically. Day after day, they presented evidence. Bank statements showing the systematic theft, video footage of Derek entering my home when I wasn't there, text messages between Sophia and Derek, planning their scheme. The most damaging evidence came when they played the recorded phone call, the one where Sophia and Derek laughed about me being a nobody who would just roll over. Watch the jury's faces when they heard that. Watch the disgust register, the anger. These were ordinary people working people, family people land. They understood betrayal. They understood what it meant when someone you trust stabs you in the back. Sophia's defense tried to paint her as a victim, claimed Derek had manipulated her, that she'd been coerced. She still loved me and regretted everything. But then the prosecution called me to the stand. I'd been dreading this moment. Having to face Sophia directly, having to speak about the most painful period of my life in front of strangers. But when I sat in that witness box and the prosecutor asked me to describe my marriage, something shifted inside me. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was calm, cold, certain. I loved her completely, I said, my voice steady. I trusted her with everything. My money, my future, my heart. And she used that trust to destroy me. Not for need, we had enough. Not out of passion, she didn't love Derek. Not really. She did it because she thought I was weak, because she thought she could get away with it. I looked directly at Sophia for the first time during the trial. She was crying, shaking her head like she wanted to deny it. But she was wrong, I continued. I wasn't weak. I was just kind. There's a difference. And she mistook that kindness for stupidity. The prosecutor asked about the discovery of the theft, about how I felt when I found out. It's betrayed, I said simply. But more than that, ... I felt like I'd been living with a stranger. Like the person I married never really existed. She was just a mask. And underneath was someone I didn't recognize. Sophia's lawyer tried to cross-examine me. Tried to make it seem like I was vindictive, that I was using my newfound wealth and resources to punish her disproportionately. Mr. Chunor, should I say? Mr. Salvatore, the lawyer said with false politeness. Isn't it true that you've used your family connections to orchestrate this prosecution? That you've used your influence to make sure your wife couldn't get a fair trial? I smiled, calm. No. I used my resources to make sure the truth came out. There's a difference. Your client committed crimes. Multiple crimes. I simply made sure she couldn't hide from them. But surely, given your wealth, the amount stolen was insignificant to you. The amount is irrelevant, I interrupted. She didn't know about my inheritance when she started stealing. As far as she knew, she was taking everything I had. The intent was the same whether it was 80,000 or 80 million. She wanted to destroy me. The jury was nodding. They got it. Derek's trial was even more straightforward. He had no sympathetic angle to play. No claim of being manipulated or coerced. He'd masterminded the financial side of the theft. The evidence proved it beyond any doubt. His defense tried to claim the money had been part of legitimate investment activities that went wrong, that there was no criminal intent. But Giuseppe's forensic analysis destroyed that argument. Every transfer, every hidden account, every shell corporation at all showed deliberate, calculated theft. The most damning moment came when the prosecution revealed Derek's connection to Tony Castellano and the larger plan to frame me for money laundering. Derek's face went white when they presented evidence of his meetings with Tony. Conversations about taking down the Salvatore kit of plans that went far beyond simple theft. The jury looked horrified. This wasn't just betrayal between friends. This was a conspiracy. This was organized crime. Closing arguments happened on a Friday. Both sides gave their final speeches. Sophia's lawyer painted her as a woman who made a terrible mistake but deserved mercy. Derek's lawyer claimed the prosecution had overreached, that this was a civil matter blown out of proportion. But the prosecution's closing was devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen," the prosecutor said, walking in front of the jury box, "this case is about trust. About what happens when the people closest to you, your spouse, your best friend, decide that your life, your future, your happiness means nothing compared to their greed." Marcus Chen trusted these people completely. He gave them access to his accounts, his home, his heart, and they used that access to systematically rob him, to plan his destruction, to laugh about how easy it was to fool him. But here's what they didn't count on. They didn't count on him being smart enough to figure it out, strong enough to fight back, brave enough to demand justice. This isn't about money. It's about right and wrong. It's about holding people accountable when they hurt the ones who trust them most. Find them guilty, because they are. And send a message that betrayal like this will not be tolerated. Not in our community. Not in our courts. Not anywhere. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the four women stood and read the verdict. In the case of the state versus Sophia Chen, on the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. 3 guilty verdicts. Sophia collapsed in her chair, sobbing. In the case of the state versus Derek Morrison, on the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of racketeering, we find the defendant guilty. For guilty verdicts. Derek sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Sophia received 5 years in prison. With possibility of parole after 3, the judge was harsh in his remarks. "Mrs. Chen, you violated the most sacred trust that exists between two people. You betrayed your husband in the cruelest possible way. While prison will give you time to reflect on your choices, I hope you understand that the real punishment is knowing what you destroyed. A good man's trust, a marriage, a future. Those can never be restored." Derek received 8 years with no parole eligibility for 5. The judge was even harsher with him. "Mr. Morrison, you didn't just betray a friend. You participated in a conspiracy with organized crime to destroy someone's life. You are fortunate that more serious charges weren't pursued. Use your time in prison to become someone better than the person you've shown yourself to be." I sat through both sentencings, watched as they were led away in handcuffs, watched as the people who'd tried to destroy me faced the consequences of their choices, and felt nothing. No satisfaction. No joy, no revenge-induced high, just closure, just finality, just the cold certainty that justice had been served. After the trials ended, I had to figure out who I was now. Not Marcus Chin, the accountant. Not Marcus, the betrayed husband. But Marcus Salvatore, heir to an empire I never knew existed. Vincent and his team helped me navigate my new reality. I learned about every business, every property, every investment my grandfather had set up. It was overwhelming at first. Restaurants, real estate, legitimate businesses that had been running smoothly for decades. Your grandfather was brilliant, Carlo explained one day as we reviewed holdings. He knew that real power comes from legitimate success, backed by the respect that comes from understanding the streets. He never relied on fear alone. He built things that lasted. I made a decision early on. I would honor my grandfather's legacy, but I would do it my way. Completely legitimate. No gray areas. No questionable connections. I want to transform everything, I told Vincent. Keep the businesses, but make them completely clean. Legal, above board. I'm not interested in power through fear. I want to build something my grandfather would be proud of, but something I can be proud of too. Vincent smiled. Dominic always said, you take after your father. Antonio wanted the same thing, to be legitimate, to build something clean. Your grandfather respected that, even if he didn't understand it. Over the next 6 months, I worked with Carlo and a team of lawyers to restructure everything. We dissolved any questionable connections, paid off anyone who had leverage, made it clear that the Salvatore businesses were now completely legitimate enterprises. Some of the old guard didn't like it. A few of my grandfather's former associates thought I was weak, thought I was dishonoring his memory, but Vincent shut that down quickly. Marcus is the heir. What he says goes. And anyone who has a problem with that can walk away. Permanently. No one walked away. I also started using my resources for good. Real good. Not just charity donations, but meaningful change. I established a foundation in my mother's name, the Lynn Salvatore. Foundation focused on helping young people from difficult backgrounds get education and opportunities, scholarships, job training, mentorship programs. I used my real estate holdings to create affordable housing in neighborhoods that needed it. Not at a loss, I'm a businessman. Not a charity, but at fair rates that helped families build stability. I opened community centers in 3 neighborhoods that my grandfather had once controlled through fear. Now, those same neighborhoods had safe places for kids to go after school, job assistance for adults, counseling services for families. People started to see the Salvatore name differently. Not as something to fear, but as something that gave back. That helped. That built instead of taking. One day, about 8 months after the trials, I was at one of the community centers. I'd been meeting with the director, discussing expansion plans, when a kid maybe 16 came up to me nervously. Mr. Salvatore? He said, fidgeting with his backpack straps. Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you. The scholarship program you set up? I got one. I'm going to college next year. First person in my family. He stuck out his hand. I shook it, and I saw something in his eyes. Hope. Possibility. A future he hadn't thought was available to him. That's great, I said. What are you going to study? Business. I want to start my own company someday. Like you did. I smiled. I didn't start it. I inherited it. But I'm trying to do something good with it. You're building from nothing. That's 100 times more impressive. He grinned and walked away. And I realized something in that moment. This was what legacy really meant. Not fear, not power, not revenge. It meant giving someone else a chance. It meant using what you have to make the world a little bit better than you found it. My grandfather built an empire through strength and control. My father tried to escape it entirely. And me, I was trying to transform it into something neither of them had imagined. Something good. About a year after the trials, I received a letter. It came to my office, the penthouse suite in one of the buildings I owned, downtown, delivered by hand. The return address was the women's correctional facility. From Sophia, I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to throw it away unread. She'd said everything she needed to say during the trial. What could possibly be left? But curiosity won out. I opened it. Dear Marcus, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this. But I need to write it anyway. Asterisk, asterisk, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, about who I was. About the person I became when I thought I could get away with hurting you. Asterisk, asterisk, you were right during the trial. I thought you were weak. I thought your kindness was stupidity. I thought I was smarter than you, that I deserved more than what we had. I was wrong about all of it. You weren't weak. You were good. And I destroyed that goodness because I couldn't see it for what it was. Asterisk, asterisk, I don't know who you are now. I heard rumors in here about your family, about your grandfather, about who you really are. Part of me is terrified that you'll use that power to make things worse for me. Asterisk, asterisk. But part of me hopes you won't, because the Marcus, the first married the real Marcus. Underneath all the hurt I caused wasn't cruel. He was just asterisk, asterisk. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what I destroyed, and I'm sorry. Not because it will change anything, but because it's true. Asterisk, asterisk, I hope you're happy. I hope you found someone who deserves you. I hope you're building something better than what I tried to tear down. Asterisk, asterisk, Sophia, asterisk. I read it 3 times. Looked for manipulation, for hidden angles, for some attempt to guilt me into helping her, but I didn't find any of that. It just seemed ... sad, honest. The words of someone who'd hit bottom and finally understood what they'd lost. I put the letter in my desk drawer. Didn't respond. Didn't need to. She was right about one thing. I was building something. Something better. Something that honored my grandfather's strength. While embracing my father's ideals and my mother's compassion, I was building a legacy that was entirely my own. Derek's family never contacted me. Never apologized. They just disappeared from my life entirely, which was fine with me. But about 6 months into his sentence, I got a call from the prison. Derek wanted to speak with me. A supervised call, recorded through official channels? I almost said no. What could he possibly say that I wanted to hear? But Vincent convinced me. Sometimes closure comes from letting them have their last word, even if it doesn't change anything. So I took the call. Marcus. Derek's voice was hollow, tired. Thanks for taking this. What do you want, Derek? I wanted to apologize. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't change what I did, but I needed to say it. Silence. I was jealous, he continued. Of you. Of your life. You had everything together. Good job, beautiful wife, stable future, and I was drowning. Bad investments. Gambling debts. I was desperate, so you decided to destroy me? I convinced myself you'd be fine, that you'd recover, that it wasn't that big of a deal. I know how insane that sounds now. It wasn't just about the money, I said quietly. You were my best friend, Derek, my best friend. And you slept with my wife. You laughed about me. You plotted to frame me for crimes. That wasn't desperation. That was evil, I know. His voice cracked. I know. And I'm going to spend the next 8 years living with that. Probably the rest of my life after that, honestly. No one's going to hire me when I get out. No one's going to trust me. I destroyed my entire life. Yes, you did. I heard about what you're doing now. The foundation. The community centers. You're doing good things, Marcus. Real things. I'm trying. That's more than I ever did. I wanted you to know that I see it. I see what you've become. And I'm genuinely glad you didn't let what we did break you. I didn't know what to say to that. Goodbye, Derek, I finally said. Bye, Marcus. And I really am sorry. I hung up. Vincent looked at me. How do you feel? Empty, I admitted. It doesn't change anything. Him being sorry doesn't fix what was broken. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some things aren't meant to be fixed. Just ... Moved past. Your grandfather used to say that forgiveness is weakness, Vincent said. But I think he was wrong. I think forgiveness is power. The power to let go. To move forward. To not let anger poison your future. I thought about that. I don't forgive them. Not really. But I'm not angry anymore either. I'm just ... done. They're part of my past. And I'm focused on my future. Vincent smiled. Then you've already won. Act 2. 2 years after everything happened. I was finally comfortable with who I'd become. Marcus. Salvatore. Businessman. Philanthropist. The man who transformed his grandfather's empire into something positive. Split my time between managing the various businesses I'd inherited and expanding the foundation. The community centers were thriving. The scholarship program had sent 43 kids to college so far. The affordable housing initiative was expanding to 2 more neighborhoods. People in the city knew my name now. Not with fear, like they'd known my grandfather's name, but with respect. With appreciation, I'd made peace with my legacy. With the fact that I came from darkness but chose to walk toward light. One evening, this was at one of my restaurants, the same one where I'd confronted the Castellano brothers 2 years earlier. It had been renovated, upgraded, turned into a high-end Italian place that was now one of the most popular spots in the city. I was having dinner alone, reviewing some proposals for a new youth center, when someone approached my table, a woman. Late 20s, beautiful, professional-looking. She had intelligent eyes and a confident smile. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Marcus Salvatore?" I looked up. "I am. Can I help you?" "I'm Dr. Alina Rossi. I run a nonprofit that provides medical services to underserved communities. I heard about your foundation, and I was hoping we might collaborate on some initiatives." I gestured to the empty seat across from me. "Please, sit. Tell me about your work." We talked for 2 hours. About her clinics. About the gaps in healthcare for low-income families. About how my resources could help expand services. But we also talked about other things. About life. About purpose. About what drives people to help others instead of just helping themselves. "Why do you do it?" she asked at one point. "You could just enjoy your wealth. Live a quiet, comfortable life. Why put yourself out there? Why work so hard to give back?" I thought about how to answer that. About Sophia and Derek. About my grandfather and his empire. About the choice I'd made to be different. "Because I learned something important," I finally said. "Power without purpose is just noise. Money without meaning is just numbers." I was given a second chance to rebuild my life, to redefine my legacy. And I decided that if I was going to have power, I was going to use it to make things better. Not perfect, but better. Alina smiled. "That's a good answer. What about you?" "Why medicine? Why nonprofits instead of a lucrative private practice?" "Because I watched my father die from a treatable illness because we couldn't afford proper care," she said simply. "And I decided no one else should have to go through that if I could help prevent it." We understood each other, I realized. We were both driven by pain that had been transformed into purpose. "I'd like to help with your clinics," I said. "Let's set up a proper meeting. Bring your team. I'll bring mine. Let's see what we can build together." Her smile widened. "I'd like that." She left. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not just for the work we could do together, but for something more personal. Something about her reminded me that not everyone was like Sophia, that there were good people in the world. People worth trusting, maybe eventually worth loving again. So what's the moral of this story? What did I learn from betrayal? From discovering a hidden legacy, from taking revenge, and then transforming it into something meaningful? I learned that identity is a choice. I could have been Marcus Chen, the broken accountant who never recovered from betrayal. I could have been Marcus Salvatore, the angry grandson seeking to reclaim a dark empire through fear and violence. Instead, I chose to be something else entirely. Someone who took the pain of betrayal and the power of legacy and forged them into something new, something better. I learned that revenge, real revenge, isn't about destruction. It's about justice. About making sure that people who hurt you face real consequences. But then, and this is crucial, it's about moving forward. About not letting anger define you. Sophia and Derek are in prison. They lost everything. Their freedom, their reputations, their futures. That's justice. But if I'd stopped there, if I'd just been satisfied with their destruction, I would have been just as broken as they were. Instead, I built something. I took my grandfather's empire and transformed it. I used the resources he'd left me to create opportunities for people who needed them. I turned a legacy of fear into a legacy of hope. And that's the ultimate revenge, really. Not making your enemies suffer, but proving that you're better than they ever thought you could be. Proving that their betrayal didn't break you, made you stronger. I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about loyalty. About who stands with you when things get hard. Vincent, Carlo, Frank, Giuseppe, these men who had served my grandfather, who owed me nothing, they became my real family. They taught me, protected me, helped me navigate a world I didn't understand. Sophia was my wife, but she was never family. Not really. Because family doesn't destroy you for profit. Family doesn't laugh at your pain. Real family builds you up. Real family tells you the truth. Real family stands with you even when it's difficult. I learned that legacy is what you make it, not what you inherit. My grandfather was a powerful man, a feared man, and in his own way, probably a good man, according to the codes he lived by. But his legacy was complicated, dark, dangerous. I could have rejected it entirely, like my father tried to do. Or I could have embraced it and become another crime lord. Instead, I transformed it, kept the strength, the resources, the respect, but channeled them into something positive, something lasting in a different way. My grandfather's name is still remembered in this city, but now, when people hear Salvatore, they think of community centers and scholarships and opportunities. They think of second chances and hope. That's the legacy I'm building, and it's mine, not my grandfather's. It's not my father's. Mine, most importantly. I learned that you can't let betrayal define you. What Sophia and Derek did was horrible, cruel, unforgivable in many ways. And for a while, that betrayal was everything. It consumed me, drove me, shaped every decision. But if I'd stayed in that place, if I'd let anger and hurt be my only motivation, I would have become something twisted, something broken. Instead, I used the betrayal as fuel to become better, to be smarter, to be stronger, to build something meaningful. Their betrayal was a chapter in my story, an important chapter, a defining chapter. But it wasn't the whole story. It wasn't the end. The end is still being written. And it's a story about a man who discovered who he really was, faced the darkness in his past, and chose to walk toward the light. Today, I'm 30 years old. I run multiple successful businesses. I oversee a foundation that's changing lives. I'm building relationships with people who actually deserve my trust. And sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment when Vincent told me who my grandfather was. That moment when everything I thought I knew about myself shattered. It was terrifying, overwhelming, the kind of revelation that breaks people, but it also set me free. Free from the lies I'd been living. Free from the people who were using me. Free to become who I was always meant to be. I never knew my grandpa was a Mafia king, but discovering that truth saved my life. It gave me the power to fight back against betrayal, to demand justice, to rebuild myself into someone stronger, and most importantly, it taught me that we all have darkness in our past. We all have secrets. We all have legacies we didn't choose, but we get to decide what we do with them. We get to decide who we become. I chose to become someone my mother would be proud of, someone my father would admire, someone my grandfather would respect, even if he wouldn't fully understand. I chose to become Marcus Salvatore, not the accountant, not the crime lord, but the man who took a broken legacy and made it whole. And that choice, that decision to be better, that's the real revenge. That's the real victory. Because Sophia and Derek tried to destroy me. The Castellanos tried to erase my family's name. They all thought I was weak, powerless, someone who could be used and discarded. They were wrong. And now, every day, I wake up and build something beautiful. I'm proving just how wrong they were. That's my story. That's my revenge. That's my legacy, and I'm just getting started.